In this lecture, we'll discuss Ralf Dahrendorf's conflict theory. Before we begin into what Dahrendorf's views were, let us understand what is conflict theory. To begin with, let us understand its origin point. The conflict theory originated in the 1950s to study social structure and social institutions. Now, we know that the functionalist school, it also studied social structure and social institutions. So, to counter the structural functionalism, the conflict theory was originated. So, it was a reaction to structural functionalism, which says that society is based on integration and cooperation. So, the conflict theory says that it is not only integration and codependence, but there are also some other dimensions of the society which leads to change in the society. The roots of conflict theory can be found in Marxian theories and Simmel's work on social conflict. Marxian theories we have already covered. Simmel's theory we will be studying later on. This theory was superseded by the neo-Marxian theories, which will be covered in a different lecture. So some key differences between conflict theory and functionalist theory. The conflict theory says that the society is subject to change and there are many dimensions in the society. Whereas the functionalist theory says that society is static, it does not change. Rather, they say that it moves slowly but towards equilibrium. There is no dimension. The conflict theory counters and says that the elements in the society lead to disintegration. But the functionalist theory talks about order, stability, and integration. The roots of order, according to the conflict theory, lie in coercion from those who hold the top position in the society and who hold power. Whereas functionalists say that the society is held together by values and norms. The conflict theory says power is the sole reason which helps in maintaining order in the society. The functionalist theory says that cohesion in society is due to shared values, norms, and morals. So we know that after reading this, we can get an idea that these two are polar opposites. They are extreme theories. One talks about disintegration and the other talks about integration. Now, once we have compared, let us see what were some of the criticisms of conflict theory. The first criticism is that it ignores order and stability perspective. Like I said, these two theories are polar opposites and they are extremist theories. So it obviously ignores order and stability because it is focusing on power, coercion. Therefore, it is one-dimensional and it is a very radical theory. It talks about all radical things. Another criticism was this was an underdeveloped theory and it wasn't even very true to the Marxist theory because it wasn't developed properly like the other theories that were developed by Marx. This theory was criticized on the grounds that it was a derivative theory from structural functionalism and it could never divorce itself from the same because its roots were taken from structural functionalism. So these were some of the criticisms. Now we are going to get into Dahrendorf's theory. We are going to understand one aspect of it, how he talked about the two phases of society. So his work was Antithesis in the year 1958. He has talked about conflict theory of society. Please remember, when we talk about Dahrendorf, he has given the conflict theory of society, which was a macro perspective. Macro perspective means it was on a very grand level, and the macro perspective talks about the structure in society. He said that the enforced constraint holds the society together. That means the society is together, it is bound together, it is held together because of the various constraints which are enforced upon it, and there is no integration or shared values or shared interests. He says that there are two phases of society. One is conflict and the other is consensus. Conflict examines the conflict of interest and coercion which binds the society. And by consensus, he means that integration. Now, one very paradoxical thing is that he said that these two things coexist, but he said that conflict is one ugly thing in the face of society. But he insisted that the sociological theories should be based on these two faces only, that is, conflict and consensus. He also argued that these terms are interrelated and they exist in relationship with each other. Not only this, he said that they are prerequisites for each other. By prerequisites, he meant that for conflict to be there in the society, consensus has to be there, and for consensus to exist, some kind of conflict should be there. Therefore, a must prerequisite they are for each other. For example, for a conflict and consensus to stay together, we can take the example of how in the older times the kings used to become friends. Two kingdoms used to become friends with each other. They used to form an alliance so that they could stand up together and face the third party and defeat them. So he says that there has to be some kind of identification, some kind of interaction, some kind of knowledge about each other prior, and some kind of integration which will lead to consensus and vice versa. For example, when two people have no idea about each other, like I am teaching you from here and you have no idea about me. So if something happens to me in my life, it is not going to affect you because the prerequisite of integration is not there. Therefore, conflict between us cannot exist. So this is how he talked about the two faces of society and how conflict plays an important role. Now he has also talked about groups and other important perspectives that we are going to continue in the next lecture. For now, let us look at some questions. Question number 1, who called conflict and coercion the ugly face of society? This was said by Dahrendorf. The option will be option number 3. Next question. We have to match the list of thinkers and the statements they have given. They all have given the theories of conflict and they have given some statements, so we have to match them. The right option is option number 3, where Martindale has talked about conflict theory as a creation of men of affairs. Second, the conflict of self-interest and social interest is given by Adam Smith. Social and cultural evolution is given by Gombrowicz, and group conflict is to be seen in terms of conflict over legitimacy of authority is given by Dahrendorf. What he has talked about authority will be starting in the next lecture. I hope you got this lecture. Thank you for watching.